Remember when we saw the trailer for X-Men Apocalypse and I banged my head against the wall because it looked terrible? I hate it when I'm right. Hi, I'm Ryan, your host for The Toast, and we're going to talk about X-Men Apocalypse. Cross-Men. Times minus men. 10 men. First up, I haven't done a video in a while, so I've been working like a madman, so I gotta get back into the groove here. Let's get my movie ire going. X-Men Apocalypse is a prime example of a poor screenplay, poorly realized. Now I know that sounds harsh, especially coming from an X-Men fan, but frankly Bryan Singer has been given this whole new crop of characters and a new timeline to explore, to rewrite all the mistakes of the old movies, and he wastes it on this dribble. Okay, so story-wise, basically, yeah, the first mutant is a guy called M'Saba Nur, and he's basically a god in ancient Egypt, but he's the first mutant, so he's not really God, he's just got the powers of a god, and he likes to parade himself around as a god. Gets betrayed by his followers, sealed in his temple, wakes up thousands of years later in the 80s. Suspiciously, when Moira McTaggart is poking around, everything loves to happen at the same time with main characters. So an ancient godlike being wakes up and the first thing he does, he puts on a hood and skulks around Egypt being like, oh, what's this? What's this? There's something in the air. What's this? Storm's got mohawk hair. What's this? Honestly, if I was a giant immortal god, I would have strutted out into the middle of Egypt being, behold, I hath returned. All kneel before the might of Apocalypse. Not, come my child, we will skulk around and do nothing for 2 hours. Frankly, Ronan the Accuser has more presence and looked better. Come to think of it, weren't Egyptians really short, like 5 feet tall, so wouldn't he strut out like, come my horseman? Okay, I kind of got off track. So Apocalypse shows up, starts the boy band, and the X-Men want to stop him, but only after finding Magneto's with him, otherwise they don't really care. So the movie starts out kind of cool in ancient Egypt, and then it goes into the kind of X-tunnel vision thing that all the Bryan Singer movies have as an intro, and I gotta admit, the X-tunnel thing was pretty damn cool, because you're going through it and you're seeing the different time periods fly by, and history and planes and Nazis, and you're going all the way up to the 80s. So when that hit, I got optimistic. I was like, hey, that's a good idea. I'm enjoying this so far. Did not last long. For starters, Apocalypse, the titular character, is reduced to an extremely unmotivated and generic villain. He's just got no grandeur or gravitas like he did in an old 90s cartoon. Poor Oscar Isaac can't do much more than walk and whisper in that overly clunky suit, let alone be imposing. Seriously, all Apocalypse has to do is raise his hands and just waits for the CGI to happen. His horseman too, just looks so bored and uninteresting all the time, let alone joining him without a second thought. And poor Olivia Munn, stuck in the only comic-accurate design, which just does not translate onto film. I mean, she's sexy and all, but it just looks so uncomfortable and it just stands out like a sore thumb compared to the other outfits. Armor. Latex. Pocket perv. Now, is it just me, or does this version of the 80s seem way too technologically advanced? Like the crazy helijet thing they have near the end of the movie. I mean, that we don't have that shit now. I like how Professor X constantly switches chairs to an electric chair to the wheelie chair all the time. I guess he has to switch because his electric chair just seems to be stuck in one rotating motion. I mean, every time you see him teaching in class, that's all he does is spins on one spot. Okay, in today's class we're going to talk about something generic until I'm just going to come back around here, until we're interrupted by some characters who are going to actually start the plot, but it makes it look like okay, 1 second, I'll be right there. You know what, I'm just going to psychically make you smarter. Now, character-wise, the actors were all completely capable and they did a great job, but with so many characters, this is no time to get invested. Even characters that we've spent 3 movies with, like Mystique or even Magneto, just have no presence in this film. I've heard a lot of comments about how Jennifer Lawrence has phoned it in for this movie, and with how little there is of her in this movie, I can see why people think that. Also, it's pretty evident that she doesn't like the makeup chair because she's barely ever blue in this movie, and when she is, she's wearing a blue bodysuit. It's not body paint anymore. I don't have a problem with that. It's probably way better for the actor, but the thing is, you do lose a lot of detail, like her scaling is just like blotches on her. Now, you can really see in this movie where Fox is trying to emulate Marvel, both with color and design. And to the film's credit, a lot of the things based on original comic book designs actually look good and pleased a nostalgic guy like myself. I think my favorite original design kind of throwback to the comics had to do with Wolverine. It's not really a spoiler, but his look in this movie is based on what he originally looked like in Weapon X, and I'm glad we got to see that on screen. Sure, it kind of looks dorky, but what can I say? I've been waiting to see that on screen for a long time. And it's definitely no spoilers that Wolverine's in this movie because they spoiled that in the trailer, like everything else. Honestly, you watch the trailer and you know what happens in this movie. It's one of those movies where the trailer is exactly the same as the movie, so it's like, what's the point? Even with some fun moments and some cool design choices, it was too little too late, I'm afraid, because this movie was dull. I think I mentioned before how I tell it's a dull movie is when my attention breaks and I start looking around the theater and see how many people are sitting like this. Now granted, the movie picks up for a big finale, but it's so over the top with CGI and terrible stunts that the absurdity killed it. Seriously, there's this one part where Beast catches a car and swings it around, and it's so obviously on a rig. I mean, I know it has to be on a rig to film the damn movie, but you're not supposed to be able to tell. Not to mention a certain spoiler that conveniently shows up to solve everything and then just disappears without any consequences. I know I'm not talking about Quicksilver, but I might as well be. I mean, he's so overpowered. Now, I like Quicksilver. He's one of my favorite X-Men characters, and his sequences in this are fun, and he's pretty much the only source of comic relief in the movie. And as cool as the Quicksilver sequences are, the physics in them just do not make sense, especially when he's moving people around. But I know I'm not going to complain about the physics of Quicksilver, because then you just wouldn't have a movie and you wouldn't have these cool sequences. So I'm just going to zip it. This is why I still like the Avengers Quicksilver better, I think, because not only did he have kind of a cool blue lightning motion effect, but he was a lot more scrappy. He kind of just, like, had to clamber around because he's moving too fast. But I'm not going to pick favorites because I can't complain. I'm getting two versions of a character I like. Speaking of characters, people like Jean and Cyclops and Nightcrawler, if I'm not picking on them, then they're fine. I mean, they did a perfectly serviceable job. They were there in the movie. They didn't shine. They didn't do anything spectacular. Well, some of them did, but I mean, you know, it's a superhero movie. They've got to do something spectacular to warrant them being in the movie. So I guess Nightcrawler is good to walk around in public as long as he's dressed as Thriller. And where did he get that jacket? Did they just find that jacket and buy it for him? What I'm saying is the actors did a fine job. It's just the filmmaking was not up to par on this one, and they just relied too much on spectacle, not enough on characters. Wasted Oscar Isaac, wasted a cool villain like Apocalypse, and it just wasn't entertaining. It was dull. The pacing issues just killed this film. Now, I'm not just going to pick on fanboy problems in this review. I'm also going to talk about how bad the screenplay was. It was just full of ham. In fact, it was full of the whole hog. Apocalypse and Magneto in particular have some of the worst dialogue I've heard, even for a comic book movie. Especially when Apocalypse is talking about superpowers, like world powers like Russia and the US. They're trying to be clever, but it just sounds silly coming from a character who's supposed to be serious. And Magneto spends most of the movie hanging on a wire, falling asleep with his hands out as they animate CGI debris around him. Charles. Unfortunately, kids aren't going to go back and read the books that inspire these movies, so it's a shame that this is all this generation's going to experience. And that's why X-Men Apocalypse just gets the rating of beans on toast. Hey, it's a decent mouthful, but it's going to leave you with stinky farts. As much as I've been disappointed with this film, there were still moments that gave me chills where the theme music came in, and then, like, especially Magneto's little symbolism thing at the end, that got me. But not enough. Not enough to save the movie, unfortunately. I could quite happily watch a half-hour episode that is this movie and be quite content. There's actually a very meta joke spoken by Jean Grey in this film about how the third movie is always the worst. Of course, poking fun back at X3, which is the worst of the X-Men films. They don't quite realize that this is also the third movie in the new generation of X-Men. The joke still applies. Honestly, the best part of the movie is when they show clips from First Class, the only good X-Men movie. What was so great about First Class is not necessarily it had big action or anything like that, but you definitely had some really interesting characters, interesting power sets, and above all, emotion. You really did feel the emotion and connection, even between Charles and Magneto. They were connected, they emoted, they really did play off each other well. In these, they barely see each other at all, and even when they do, it's kind of like they're trying to rehash little bits from the first movie. But rehashing something special from one movie to try and make your movie interesting just doesn't work. It's really got to stand on its own. As long as it doesn't last stand on its own. Anyway, if you want to see more clips from me, click away, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers. And what was with the Stan Lee cameo? That was in such bad taste. Stan Lee is supposed to be an enjoyable thing that you experience and when you watch a Marvel movie. This time it was so dire and droll and really just ruined what was supposed to be a dramatic scene and made it sad. I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy when I see Stan Lee. Bad form, X-Men Apocalypse. Bad form. Oh, and we're gonna get another one too.